Live resignation. Reporter discovers the reason and shouts on national news that they... In a shocking turn of events, veteran news anchor Sarah Mitchell finds herself at the center of a nationwide scandal when she dramatically quits her prestigious position on live television. As the story unfolds, viewers will be drawn into a web of corruption, betrayal, and unexpected alliances that reach the highest levels of media and government, forcing Sarah to confront the true cost of truth in an era of fake news and corporate control. Sarah Mitchell stood before the mirror in her dressing room, meticulously adjusting her blazer and smoothing out invisible wrinkles. At 42, she was the picture of poise and professionalism, her auburn hair styled in a sleek bob that framed her face perfectly. The harsh fluorescent lights revealed faint worry lines around her eyes, testament to years of late nights and breaking news stories. For 15 years, Sarah had been the face of trust for millions of Americans, delivering the nightly news with unwavering composure. Her piercing blue eyes and warm, authoritative voice had guided viewers through natural disasters, political scandals, and global crises. Tonight, however, something felt different. As she applied a final touch of lipstick, Sarah caught her own gaze in the mirror. There was a flicker of uncertainty, a shadow of doubt that she quickly pushed aside. She had a job to do, after all. The American people were counting on her. 5 minutes, Ms. Mitchell, called a stagehand from outside her door. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. She picked up her phone, scrolling through the day's headlines one last time. A notification caught her eye, an email from an unknown sender. Curiosity piqued. She opened it. The contents made her blood run cold. For a moment, Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing. The implications of what she just read were staggering. If true, it would shake the very foundations of the network she called home for over a decade. 2 minutes. Sarah's heart pounded. She had a choice to make and precious little time to make it. As she stepped out of her dressing room and walked towards the studio, the weight of the decision pressed down on her shoulders. The familiar buzz of the newsroom enveloped her. Producers rushed back and forth, last-minute scripts were printed, and the low hum of monitors filled the air. It was a dance Sarah knew by heart, a rhythm that usually calmed her nerves. Not tonight. As she took her seat behind the iconic desk, Sarah's mind whirled. The teleprompter blinked to life, the comforting words of the evening's top stories appearing before her. But the email's contents burned in her mind, overshadowing everything else. 10 seconds. The red light on the camera flickered on. Sarah plastered on her practiced smile, ready to greet millions of viewers across the nation. Good evening, America. This is Sarah Mitchell with tonight's news. As she began reading the first story, Sarah's internal struggle raged on. The words flowed from her lips automatically, but her mind was elsewhere. With each passing second, the weight of her knowledge grew heavier. Little did Sarah know, her decision in the next few moments would set in motion a chain of events that would not only change her life forever but shake the very foundations of American media and politics. The stage was set, the clock was ticking, and Sarah Mitchell was about to make the most important choice of her career, live, in front of millions of unsuspecting viewers. As Sarah continued to deliver the news with her signature poise, her mind raced. The stories she read aloud seemed trivial compared to the bombshell waiting in her inbox. Halfway through the broadcast, during a pre-recorded segment about a local hero, Sarah made her decision. The red light blinked back on, signaling her return to live television. Sarah took a deep breath, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the microphones would pick it up. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "I apologize for interrupting our scheduled programming, but I have an announcement to make." In the control room, producers exchanged confused glances. This wasn't part of the script. "For 15 years, I have had the privilege of bringing you the news, committed to truth and transparency," Sarah continued. "However, I've recently come into possession of information that I cannot, in good conscience, ignore." The studio fell silent. Even the normally bustling crew stood stock still, all eyes on the monitors. "Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position at this network," Sarah declared. her voice gaining strength. The American people deserve to know the truth, and I can no longer be part of an organization that... Suddenly, the feed cut to a commercial. In the studio, chaos erupted. "What the hell is going on?" bellowed Marcus Reeves, the network's CEO, as he burst into the control room. "Get her off the air." But it was too late. Clips of Sarah's resignation were already spreading like wildfire across social media. Within minutes, #SarahMitchellResigns was trending nationwide. As security escorted her from the building, Sarah's phone buzzed incessantly. Journalists, old colleagues, and even politicians were clamoring for answers. But there was only one call she was interested in. "Hello?" she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ms. Mitchell?" came a gravelly voice from the other end. "I'm Detective Jack Harper, NYPD. We need to talk." Sarah's stomach dropped. She knew this call would come, but not so soon. "About what, detective?" "About the email you received. And about the body we just found in Central Park." Sarah nearly dropped her phone. "Body? What body?" "A man named Alan Friedman. I believe you knew him." The world seemed to spin around Sarah. Alan Friedman was the source who had sent her the damning email just hours ago. And now he was dead. "Ms. Mitchell." Detective Harper's voice cut through her shock. "I'm going to need you to come down to the station. It seems you're our primary person of interest." As Sarah hailed a cab, her mind reeled. In the span of an hour, she had lost her job, blown the whistle on a massive conspiracy, and become a murder suspect. But this was just the beginning. Across town, in a luxurious penthouse overlooking the city, Marcus Reeves poured himself a stiff drink. His phone rang, displaying a number he knew all too well. "It's done," he said simply before hanging up. The pieces were in motion. Sarah Mitchell had just stepped into a game far bigger and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. And the stakes? Nothing less than the future of American democracy itself. Sarah sat in the cold, sterile interrogation room, her fingers drumming nervously on the metal table. The events of the past few hours felt surreal, like a fever dream she couldn't shake. Detective Jack Harper entered, his weathered face a mask of professional detachment. "Ms. Mitchell," he began, settling into the chair across from her. "Let's start from the beginning. Tell me about Alan Friedman." Sarah took a deep breath. "Alan was a data analyst at the network. We weren't close, but he always seemed troubled, like he was carrying a heavy secret." Harper's eyes narrowed. "And the email? What did it say?" Sarah hesitated, weighing her words carefully. It contained evidence of widespread corruption within the network. Collusion with government officials, manipulation of polling data, even blackmail. But it wasn't just about the network. It implicated several high-ranking politicians and corporate leaders in a conspiracy to control public opinion. "That's quite an accusation," Harper remarked, his tone neutral. "Do you still have this email?" Sarah's heart sank. In the chaos of her resignation and arrest, she'd left her phone at the studio. "It's on my work phone, which is probably in Marcus Reeves' possession by now." Harper leaned back, his chair creaking. "Convenient." Just then, there was a commotion outside. The door burst open, revealing a sharply dressed woman in her 50s. "This interview is over," she announced. "I'm Evelyn Cho, Ms. Mitchell's attorney." Harper looked annoyed but didn't protest. As Sarah followed Evelyn out, she whispered, "I didn't call an attorney." Evelyn gave her a tight smile. "Let's just say you have friends in unexpected places. Now, we need to move quickly. You're not safe here." As they exited the police station, a sleek black car pulled up. The back door opened, revealing a face Sarah recognized instantly: Senator Elizabeth Roth, one of the most powerful women in Washington. "Get in," the senator ordered. "We have a lot to discuss." Bewildered, Sarah complied. As the car merged into New York traffic, Senator Roth fixed her with a steely gaze. "Ms. Mitchell, what you've stumbled upon goes far deeper than you can imagine. Alan Friedman was part of a group working to expose a vast network of corruption. His death was no accident." Sarah's mind reeled. "But why me? Why send the email to me?" Because you were the only one they trusted to do the right thing, Roth replied. But now you've painted a target on your back. The people behind this will stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. Suddenly, Sarah noticed two black SUVs gaining on them. We're being followed, she said, her voice tight with fear. Senator Roth remained calm. Driver, initiate evasive maneuvers. What followed was a heart-pounding chase through the streets of New York. Their skilled driver weaved through traffic, narrowly avoiding collisions. Sarah's knuckles turned white as she gripped the seat. Who are they? She gasped as bullets pinged off the car's reinforced frame. The same people who killed Alan, Roth answered grimly. And they'll kill us too if they catch us. As they sped towards the outskirts of the city, Sarah's mind raced. In less than 24 hours, her life had transformed into a high-stakes thriller. But the truly terrifying part was yet to come. The car screeched to a halt in front of an abandoned warehouse. Quickly, Evelyn urged, ushering them inside. In the dim light, Sarah made out a room full of computers and monitoring equipment. A group of people huddled around screens, their faces illuminated by the glow of data streams. Welcome, Senator Roth said, to the resistance. As Sarah took in the scene, she realized she was standing at the precipice of a war for truth, for democracy, and for the very soul of America. And whether she liked it or not, she was now at the center of it all. Little did she know, back in the city, Marcus Reeves was making a call that would set in motion events that would test Sarah's resolve, her integrity, and her very will to survive. The game was changing, and the stakes were higher than ever. Sarah Mitchell, once just a news anchor, was about to become the key player in a battle that would shape the future of the nation. The warehouse buzzed with activity as Sarah took in her surroundings. Dozens of people worked feverishly at computer stations, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of monitors. The air was thick with tension and the faint smell of coffee. Senator Roth guided Sarah to a central area where a large digital map of the United States dominated the wall. Red dots pulsed ominously across the country. Each of those dots represents a nexus of corruption we've identified, Roth explained. Media outlets, government offices, corporate headquarters, all compromised. Sarah's eyes widened as she absorbed the scale of the conspiracy. This is incredible. How long have you been tracking this? A new voice answered from behind her. Almost a decade. Sarah turned to see a tall, lean man with salt and pepper hair and piercing green eyes. He extended his hand. Jason Keller, former CIA analyst. I've been running point on this operation since the beginning. As they shook hands, Sarah noticed the deep lines etched into Jason's face, the mark of a man who had seen too much. Alan was one of our best, Jason continued, a flicker of pain crossing his features. His position at the network gave him access to crucial data. When he uncovered evidence of direct collusion between the network executives and certain political figures, he knew he had to act fast. But why me? Sarah asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since this all began. Jason's lips quirked in a sad smile. Because you were the only one with the courage and the platform to make it count. Alan had been watching you for years. He believed in you. The weight of Alan's trust and his sacrifice settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders. She straightened her spine, determination flooding her veins. All right, what's our next move? Senator Roth nodded approvingly. First, we need to secure the evidence Alan sent you. Without it, we're just conspiracy theorists with an elaborate setup. Sarah's heart sank. My phone, it's still at the network. Not anymore, Evelyn chimed in, tapping away at a tablet. According to our sources, Marcus Reeves had your office swept clean within minutes of your on-air resignation. Your phone is likely in a high-security vault in the network's headquarters by now. Jason leaned over a nearby computer, pulling up schematics of a skyscraper. One World Trade Center. The vault is on the 66th floor, sandwiched between two layers of private security. Sarah's jaw dropped. You want us to break into One World Trade Center? That's insane. Not us, Jason corrected. You. A stunned silence fell over the group. Sarah looked from face to face, waiting for someone to crack a smile, to tell her it was all a joke. But their expressions remained deadly serious. "Me?" Sarah sputtered. "I'm a journalist, not a cat burglar. I wouldn't even know where to begin." "Which is exactly why you're perfect for this," Senator Roth explained. "They'll be expecting trained operatives, not a news anchor. Plus, you still have your building access card. It hasn't been deactivated yet." Sarah's mind reeled. The plan was audacious, borderline suicidal. But as she looked at the map of corruption spread across the nation, she knew she had no choice. This was bigger than her, bigger than any of them. "Okay," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "What's the plan?" For the next few hours, Sarah was briefed on every aspect of the operation. They would strike tomorrow night, using the cover of a charity gala being held in the building's atrium. Sarah would pose as an attendee, make her way to the 66th floor, and retrieve her phone from the vault. As the team dispersed to make final preparations, Jason pulled Sarah aside. "There's something else you should know," he said, his voice low. "We have reason to believe there's a mole in our operation. Someone feeding information to the other side." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Do you know who?" Jason shook his head. "Not yet, but be careful who you trust. From here on out, you're on your own." As Sarah tried to process this new information, an alert blared from the main computer bank. Everyone rushed to gather around. On the screen, a breaking news alert flashed. Sarah's own face stared back at her, alongside the words, "Former news anchor Sarah Mitchell wanted for questioning in murder investigation." The room erupted in chaos. Sarah stood frozen, watching as her world crumbled around her. She was no longer just fighting for the truth. She was fighting for her very freedom. As the team scrambled to adjust their plans, Sarah steeled herself for what was to come. Tomorrow night, she would either expose the greatest conspiracy in American history or lose everything trying. Little did she know, forces were already in motion that would make her mission even more perilous than she could imagine. And somewhere in the shadows, a traitor was preparing to make their move. The next evening, Sarah found herself stepping out of a sleek limousine onto the red carpet leading into One World Trade Center. Her heart raced beneath the shimmering gold evening gown that hugged her curves. A delicate mask, adorned with intricate filigree, obscured the upper half of her face, a convenient feature of the masquerade-themed charity gala. "Remember," Jason's voice crackled through the nearly invisible earpiece, "you have a 20-minute window to get to the 66th floor and back. Any longer, and security rotations will make extraction nearly impossible." Sarah gave an imperceptible nod, plastering on a smile as camera flashes erupted around her. Despite being a fugitive, the mask and her years of camera experience allowed her to glide past the paparazzi without raising suspicion. Inside the atrium, the gala was in full swing. Champagne flowed freely as New York's elite mingled, blissfully unaware of the high-stakes mission unfolding in their midst. Sarah's eyes darted around, cataloging exits and security positions, as she'd been trained to do over the past 24 hours. "Your old access card should still work," Evelyn's voice came through the earpiece. "But be careful. Security protocols may have changed since your departure." Sarah made her way to the elevators, her movements purposeful but unhurried. As she stepped inside an empty car, she held her breath, tapping her access card against the reader. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft chime, the number 66 illuminated. The ascent felt agonizingly slow. Sarah's mind raced through the schematics she'd memorized, plotting her path to the vault. As the doors slid open, she stepped out cautiously, senses on high alert. The 66th floor was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the revelry below. Sarah moved swiftly down the corridor, her heels muffled by the plush carpet. She rounded a corner and froze. Two security guards stood chatting by the vault door. "Improvise," Jason's voice urged in her ear. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stumbled forward, affecting a drunken giggle. "Oh my goodness," she slurred. "I think I got a Lytle turned around looking for the powder room." The guards exchanged bemused glances. "Ma'am," This is a restricted floor. Let's get you back to the party, one said, moving to guide her towards the elevator. As he reached for her arm, Sarah executed a move she'd practiced countless times over the past day. In one fluid motion, she ducked under his grasp, swept his legs out from under him, and delivered a precise strike to a pressure point on his neck. He crumpled silently to the floor. The second guard barely had time to react before Sarah was on him, using her momentum to drive him back against the wall. His head connected with a sickening thud, and he slumped unconscious beside his colleague. "Damn, Mitchell!" Jason's impressed voice came through the earpiece. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Sarah allowed herself a grim smile as she dragged the guards into a nearby supply closet. "Let's hope that's the hardest part," she muttered, although a sinking feeling in her gut told her it was only the beginning. At the vault door, she pulled out a small device Evelyn had given her, a hybrid between an electromagnetic pulse generator and a highly sophisticated lockpick. She pressed it against the electronic lock and held her breath. Seconds ticked by like hours. Finally, with a soft click, the vault door swung open. Sarah slipped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Rows of safety deposit boxes lined the walls. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with a familiar object. "I've got eyes on the phone," Sarah whispered, reaching for the device. Suddenly, a slow clap echoed through the vault. Sarah whirled around to see a figure step out of the shadows. "I must say, I'm impressed," said Marcus Reeves, her former boss and CEO of the network. "I didn't think you had it in you, Sarah." Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized the awful truth. She'd walked right into a trap. "You've been 3 steps behind us this entire time," Marcus continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "Did you really think we wouldn't be monitoring every move your little resistance made?" As if on cue, the earpiece in Sarah's ear screeched with feedback before going dead. She was cut off from her team, alone in the lion's den. Marcus pulled out a gun, leveling it at Sarah's chest. "Now, my dear, we're going to have a long overdue conversation about loyalty, national security, and the true price of freedom in America." Outside the vault, alarms began to blare. Sarah could hear the pounding of feet as security forces converged on their location. Her mind raced, searching desperately for a way out of this impossible situation. As Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger, Sarah realized that her next move wouldn't just determine her fate. It could change the course of history itself. The clock was ticking, and Sarah Mitchell was out of time. Sarah's mind raced, adrenaline surging through her veins as she faced down the barrel of Marcus's gun. In that split second, she made a decision that would alter the course of everything. "Wait!" she exclaimed, raising her hands slowly. "Before you pull that trigger, Marcus, don't you want to know how deep this really goes?" Marcus's eyes narrowed, but curiosity flickered across his face. "What are you talking about?" Sarah took a deep breath, gambling everything on her next words. "The email Alan sent me, it wasn't just about the network. It implicated people far above your pay grade, Marcus. People who would gladly throw you to the wolves to save themselves." Doubt crept into Marcus's expression. The gun lowered slightly. "You're bluffing," he said, but uncertainty tinged his voice. "Am I?" Sarah countered, her reporter's instincts kicking in. "Think about it. Why would they put you in charge of cleaning up this mess? You're not the mastermind, Marcus. You're the fall guy." The words hit home. Marcus's resolve visibly wavered. "Prove it," he demanded. Sarah gestured towards her phone on the pedestal. "It's all there. Every name, every transaction, every dirty secret. Including the ones they didn't tell you about." Conflicting emotions warred on Marcus's face. After what felt like an eternity, he nodded. "Show me." With trembling hands, Sarah picked up her phone. As she unlocked it, she silently prayed that Jason and the team had managed to upload the decrypted files as planned. To her immense relief, a folder labeled Pandora appeared on the screen. She tapped it open, and a cascade of documents flooded the display. Marcus leaned in, his eyes widening as he scrolled through the files. This is impossible," he muttered. I'm afraid it's all too real, Sarah said softly. We're just pawns, Marcus, in a game much bigger than either of us realized. Suddenly, the vault door burst open. A team of heavily armed security personnel flooded in, led by a man Sarah recognized as the head of the network's private security force. Mr. Reeves, the leader barked. Step away from her. We'll take it from here. But Marcus didn't move. He stood frozen, staring at the phone in disbelief. No, he said quietly, then louder. No, this ends now. In a move that shocked everyone, Marcus turned and leveled his gun at the security team. Sarah, he said, his voice tight, run. Get that information out. I'll hold them off. Sarah didn't need to be told twice. As gunfire erupted behind her, she sprinted out of the vault, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Alarms blared throughout the building as Sarah raced down the emergency stairwell. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but fear and determination drove her onward. As she burst out onto the street, chaos reigned. Police sirens wailed in the distance, and panicked gala attendees streamed out of the building. Sarah, a voice called out. She turned to see Jason waving frantically from a nondescript van. She dove into the vehicle just as it peeled away from the curb, tires screeching. What happened in there? Jason demanded as they sped through the city streets. Sarah, still catching her breath, held up her phone triumphantly. We got it. All of it. And Marcus, I think he finally saw the light. As they weaved through traffic, Sarah's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was blocked. Put it on speaker, Jason instructed, his voice tense. Sarah complied, her heart pounding as she answered. Hello, Ms. Mitchell. A deep, unfamiliar voice resonated through the van. I believe we have much to discuss. Your recent activities have caught the attention of some very powerful people. Who is this? Sarah demanded. Let's just say I represent interests that align with your pursuit of the truth, the voice replied cryptically. We have an opportunity here, Ms. Mitchell, to pull back the curtain on decades of deception and manipulation. But it won't be easy, and it won't be safe. Sarah exchanged a glance with Jason, who nodded grimly. I'm listening, Sarah said. Good, the voice replied, because what I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about our nation's history. The question is, are you ready to go down this rabbit hole? As the van sped towards an uncertain destination, Sarah realized she was standing on the precipice of something monumental. The revelations in her possession had the power to reshape the very foundations of American society. But with that power came unimaginable danger. Powerful forces would stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried. And somewhere out there, a traitor was still lurking, waiting to strike. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. I'm ready, she said firmly. Tell me everything. As the mysterious caller began to speak, Sarah knew that her journey was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The van wound its way through the darkened streets of New York, the city lights blurring past as Sarah listened intently to the voice on the phone. With each passing minute, her understanding of the world around her shifted dramatically. What you've uncovered, the voice explained, is merely the tip of the iceberg. The corruption within the media and government is part of a much larger conspiracy that dates back decades. Sarah's mind reeled as the caller laid out a complex web of interconnected events. Rigged elections, manufactured wars, manipulated markets, and a shadow government pulling the strings behind it all. But why? Sarah interjected. What's the end game? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Control, Ms. Mitchell. Absolute control over the flow of information, the economy, and ultimately the will of the people. As the call ended, Sarah sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what she'd just learned. Jason's face was grim as he navigated the van towards the outskirts of the city. We need to go dark, he said, his voice tight. They'll be looking for us everywhere. Sarah nodded, her reporter's instincts kicking into high gear despite her shock. We need to verify everything we've just learned. Corroborate the information on my phone with independent sources. Agreed, Jason replied. But first, we need to ensure your safety. We're heading to a safe house upstate. From there, we can plan our next move. As they drove, Sarah's phone buzzed with news alerts. Her face was plastered across every major network, labeled as a fugitive and a person of interest in Alan's murder. She watched with a mix of frustration and determination as her colleagues reported on her supposed crimes, knowing they were unwitting pawns in a much larger game. Suddenly, Jason cursed and swerved sharply. In the rearview mirror, Sarah saw two black SUVs gaining on them rapidly. "Hold on," Jason shouted as he executed a series of evasive maneuvers, weaving through traffic at breakneck speed. Sarah's heart pounded as she gripped her seat, the van lurching and swaying with each turn. The pursuing vehicles were relentless, staying right on their tail despite Jason's best efforts. As they rounded a corner, Sarah saw their opportunity. "There!" She pointed to a busy farmer's market setting up for the day. "We can lose them in the crowd." Jason nodded, screeching to a halt at the market's edge. "Run!" he yelled as they abandoned the van. They sprinted through the maze of stalls and early morning shoppers, dodging between confused vendors and toppling displays in their wake. Sarah could hear shouts and footsteps behind them as their pursuers gave chase. Thinking quickly, Sarah grabbed a large sun hat from a nearby stall, jamming it on her head and snatching a voluminous shawl to disguise her appearance. Jason did the same, donning a vendor's apron and cap. They slowed their pace, blending into the crowd as their hunters rushed past, searching for the running figures they'd lost sight of. "This way," Jason murmured, guiding Sarah towards a subway entrance. As they descended into the station, Sarah's mind was racing. Who were they? How did they find us so quickly? Jason's expression was grim. "It confirms what I feared. The mole in our organization must have tipped them off." They boarded a train, constantly scanning for any sign of pursuit. As the subway car clattered through the tunnels beneath the city, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "What now?" she asked quietly. Jason met her gaze, his eyes steely with determination. "Now we fight back. We use the information you've obtained to expose the truth, piece by piece." Sarah nodded, a plan already forming in her mind. "We'll need to be smart about this. Release the information strategically, through channels they can't control or suppress." "Agreed," Jason said, "but we'll need help. Trusted allies who can verify and distribute the information without being compromised." As the train emerged from the tunnel, sunlight streaming through the windows, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. They had the truth on their side, and despite the overwhelming odds, she knew they had a chance to make a real difference. But as they stepped off the train and made their way towards Jason's backup safe house, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes were following their every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever. Sarah Mitchell, once just a news anchor, was now at the center of a battle for the very soul of America, and she was determined to see it through no matter the cost. As dusk settled over the quiet suburban neighborhood, Sarah and Jason approached a modest two-story house on the outskirts of a small town in upstate New York. The safe house, with its well-manicured lawn and cheerful flower beds, looked like any other family home on the block. "Welcome to your new temporary headquarters," Jason said, ushering Sarah inside after carefully checking for any signs of surveillance or tampering. The interior was sparse but functional, clearly set up for operations rather than comfort. Banks of computers lined one wall, while maps and bulletin boards covered another. A small arsenal of weapons was carefully stored in a locked cabinet. "First things first," Jason said, handing Sarah a burner phone. "We need to contact our most trusted allies and get them here. We'll need all the help we can get to verify and disseminate the information we have." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "I have a few contacts, fellow journalists who've always prioritized truth over ratings. They might be willing to help." As they worked through the night, reaching out to potential allies and poring over the mountains of data from Sarah's phone, a plan began to take shape. "We need to release the information in stages," Sarah explained, her reporter's instincts kicking into high gear. Start with something big enough to grab attention, but not so explosive that they can easily discredit or bury it. Jason agreed. And we'll need to use multiple channels, social media, independent news sites, even old-school methods like pamphlets and pirate radio broadcasts. We can't rely on any single platform that they might be able to shut down. As dawn broke, their small team began to assemble. Amy Chun, a brilliant hacker and data analyst who'd worked with Jason before, arrived first. She immediately set to work, reinforcing their digital defenses and creating secure channels for communication. Next came Michael Okafor, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist and one of Sarah's most trusted colleagues. His extensive network of sources would be crucial in verifying and expanding on the information they had. Throughout the day, more allies trickled in: a disillusioned former CIA operative, a constitutional lawyer, even a sympathetic congressman who'd grown weary of the corruption in Washington. As Sarah briefed the team on what they'd uncovered, she could see the shock and determination growing on their faces. They all understood the gravity of what they were undertaking and the dangers they would face. "Make no mistake," Sarah said, addressing the room. "What we're about to do will put all of our lives at risk. The people behind this conspiracy have immense power and resources. They won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to stop us." A solemn silence fell over the group. Then Michael spoke up. "We all knew the risks when we answered your call, Sarah. We're in this together till the end." The others nodded in agreement, their resolve evident in their eyes. As they settled into their roles, working to piece together the complex puzzle of corruption and deceit, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of hope and trepidation. They had truth on their side, but their enemies had power, money, and a willingness to do whatever it took to maintain control. Just as they were making significant progress, Amy's voice cut through the buzz of activity. "We've got a problem," she said, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "Someone's trying to breach our security protocols. They're good, really good." Jason was at her side in an instant. "Can you block them?" Amy's brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm trying, but they're adapting faster than I can put up new firewalls. It's like they know our systems inside and out." Suddenly, all the screens in the room went black. A single message appeared, sending a chill down Sarah's spine. "Did you really think you could hide from us? We're coming for you, Sarah Mitchell. And this time, there will be nowhere left to run." As alarms blared and the team scrambled to react, Sarah realized with growing horror that their safe house wasn't so safe after all. The enemy was at their doorstep, and the real battle was about to begin. In that moment of crisis, Sarah knew that every decision she made from here on out could mean the difference between exposing the truth and being silenced forever. The fate of the nation hung in the balance, and Sarah Mitchell was the linchpin holding it all together. Chaos erupted in the safe house as the team scrambled to secure their data and prepare for the impending attack. Sarah's heart raced, but her voice remained steady as she took charge of the situation. "Amy, initiate the data purge protocol. Michael, start the emergency broadcast. Everyone else, grab what you can and head for the escape tunnel." Jason was already at the weapons cabinet, distributing firearms to those trained to use them. "Sarah, you need to get out of here now. You're the one they want most." Sarah shook her head firmly. "I'm not leaving anyone behind. We're in this together." Suddenly, the sound of screeching tires and slamming car doors filled the air. Through the windows, they could see a small army of black-clad figures swarming towards the house. "They're here," Jason said grimly, positioning himself by the front door with his weapon ready. Sarah's mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare. Then, an idea struck her. "Wait," she said, grabbing her phone. "We can use this to our advantage." As the first shots rang out, shattering windows and splintering wood, Sarah hit the live broadcast button on a secure app they'd developed. Her face filled screens across the country as she began to speak, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "My fellow Americans, I'm Sarah Mitchell, reporting to you live from a location under siege. What you're witnessing is an attempt to silence the truth, a truth that threatens the very foundations of our democracy." Behind her, The sounds of gunfire and breaking glass provided a chilling backdrop to her words. Team members rushed back and forth, securing data and returning fire when necessary. The information I've uncovered reveals a conspiracy so vast, so deeply entrenched in our government and media, that its exposure could reshape our nation. And that's why they're here now, trying to stop us. Sarah ducked as a bullet whizzed overhead, but she kept talking, her eyes locked on the camera. But they've made a crucial mistake. By attacking us so openly, they've confirmed everything we've been saying. They've shown their hand, and now the whole world is watching. As she spoke, social media exploded with activity. #SarahMitchellLive trended worldwide, with millions tuning in to watch the dramatic standoff unfold in real time. In newsrooms across the country, producers scrambled to cover the unprecedented event. Even networks that had been complicit in the conspiracy couldn't ignore the story now. It was too big, too public. Back at the safe house, the situation was growing dire. Their defenses were crumbling, and it was only a matter of time before the attackers breached their position. "Sarah," Jason called out, "we need to move. Now." With a final look at the camera, Sarah delivered her closing statement. "To those watching, I implore you, don't let this be in vain. The information is out there now. Seek the truth, question everything, and hold those in power accountable. The future of our nation depends on it." As she ended the broadcast, Sarah felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. They might not survive the night, but they'd succeeded in their mission. The truth was out, and no amount of force could put it back in the box. "Let's go," she said, joining the others as they retreated towards the hidden escape tunnel. Just as they reached the entrance, a massive explosion rocked the house. Smoke filled the air as armed figures poured in through the newly created breach. Sarah found herself face to face with a masked attacker, his weapon trained on her chest. Time seemed to slow as she stared down the barrel of the gun, her life flashing before her eyes. But before the trigger could be pulled, a blur of motion knocked the attacker aside. It was Jason, engaging in hand-to-hand combat to protect her. "Run!" he shouted, grappling with the assailant. Sarah hesitated for a split second, torn between escaping and helping her friend. But she knew what Jason would want her to do, what she needed to do for the sake of their mission. With a heavy heart, she plunged into the darkness of the escape tunnel, the sounds of battle fading behind her. As she ran, Sarah silently vowed to finish what they'd started, no matter the cost. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning beneath the earth. Sarah's lungs burned, her muscles screamed for rest, but she pushed on, driven by adrenaline and the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Finally, she emerged into the cool night air, finding herself in a dense forest miles from the safe house. As she caught her breath, Sarah realized the true magnitude of her situation. She was alone, hunted, and carrying information that could change the course of history. The real battle, she knew, was just beginning. With renewed determination, Sarah Mitchell set off into the night, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in her quest to expose the truth and save her nation from the shadows that threatened to consume it. Sarah trudged through the dense forest, her designer heels long discarded, feet aching in makeshift shoes crafted from strips of her torn evening gown. The elegant attire that had served her well at the gala now hung in tatters, a reminder of how far she'd come in such a short time. As dawn broke, Sarah found herself at the edge of a small town. Her throat was parched, her stomach empty, but she knew she couldn't risk exposure. Every face could be an enemy, every security camera a potential trap. Just as despair began to creep in, Sarah spotted a symbol etched into a lamppost, 3 interlocking circles. It was a sign she and Jason had discussed, a marker used by an underground network of truth seekers and whistleblowers. Hope rekindled, Sarah followed the discreet signs through the town, eventually arriving at a small bookstore tucked away on a quiet street. A bell chimed softly as she entered. "Can I help you find something?" asked an elderly woman behind the counter, her keen eyes studying Sarah intently. Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm looking for a rare edition. Something about 3 circles." The woman's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Ah, yes. Follow me, please." She led Sarah to a back room filled with dusty volumes. After ensuring they were alone, the woman pressed a hidden switch, revealing a concealed staircase. "Quickly now," she urged. "They've been looking for you." Descending into the unknown, Sarah found herself in a high-tech command center that belied the quaint bookstore above. Dozens of people worked at computer stations, monitoring news feeds and encrypted communications. A tall, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair approached her. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Gabriel. We've been expecting you." As Gabriel brought her up to speed, Sarah learned the true scope of the underground resistance. It wasn't just a few isolated cells, but a vast network spanning the globe, comprised of journalists, hackers, former intelligence operatives, and ordinary citizens united in their quest for truth. "Your broadcast was the catalyst we've been waiting for," Gabriel explained. "It's forced the conspiracy into the open. They're scrambling, making mistakes." Sarah's mind raced with the possibilities. "Then we need to strike while they're off balance. Keep pushing, keep exposing their lies." Gabriel nodded approvingly. "Exactly. But first, we need to ensure your safety and verify the information you carry." Over the next few days, Sarah worked tirelessly with the underground team. They combed through every piece of data, cross-referencing and verifying each explosive revelation. Sarah's journalistic skills proved invaluable as they crafted a strategy to release the information for maximum impact. But even as they made progress, Sarah couldn't shake her worry for Jason and the others. Had they escaped? Were they captured? Or worse? Her answer came on the third day. A flurry of activity erupted in the command center as reports flooded in of a daring jailbreak. On screens around the room, grainy security footage showed a group of figures fleeing a high-security facility. Sarah's heart leapt as she recognized Jason among them. They were alive, and they were fighting back. With renewed determination, Sarah threw herself into the next phase of their plan. Using a network of secure servers and decentralized platforms, they began disseminating the truth in carefully timed releases. The effect was electric. Each new revelation sent shockwaves through the corridors of power. Politicians resigned in disgrace, CEOs were indicted, and previously untouchable figures found themselves under intense scrutiny. But the conspiracy wasn't going down without a fight. As their control slipped, they lashed out with increasing desperation. Cyber attacks crippled infrastructure, disinformation campaigns flooded social media, and reports of violence against journalists and whistleblowers surged. In the midst of the chaos, Sarah received an encrypted message. It was from Jason, arranging a rendezvous to consolidate their efforts. As she prepared to leave the safety of the underground base, Gabriel pulled her aside. "Be careful, Sarah. You're the face of this revolution now. They'll stop at nothing to silence you." Sarah nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. "I know, but we've come too far to back down now." Disguised and armed with the latest counter-surveillance tech, Sarah emerged into a world in turmoil. Streets were filled with protesters demanding answers. News tickers blazed with each new scandal, and an atmosphere of feverish anticipation hung in the air. As she made her way to the rendezvous point, Sarah knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of their mission, and perhaps the future of democracy itself. The final confrontation loomed, and Sarah Mitchell was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in her quest for truth and justice. Little did she know, the biggest shock of all was yet to come, a revelation that would shake her to her very core and test her resolve like never before. Sarah's heart raced as she approached the rendezvous point, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. The cityscape behind her was a mix of chaos and hope, with protesters filling the streets and news helicopters circling overhead. As she entered the dimly lit building, Sarah's senses were on high alert. She moved cautiously, remembering her training from the past few weeks. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out from the shadows. "Sarah? Is that you?" Relief washed over her as Jason stepped into view, looking worse for wear but very much alive. They embraced briefly, the weight of their shared ordeal hanging between them. I'm glad you made it, Jason said, his voice tight with emotion. We've got a lot to catch up on. As they moved deeper into the warehouse, Sarah was surprised to see a gathering of familiar faces, members of their original team who had escaped the safehouse attack, along with new allies they'd picked up along the way. Among them was a face she hadn't expected to see, Marcus Reeves, her former boss, looking haggard and haunted. Marcus, Sarah gasped. What are you doing here? He met her gaze with a mix of shame and determination. I'm here to make things right, Sarah. After what I saw, what I learned, I couldn't be part of it anymore. As the group settled in, they began to share intel and strategize their next moves. The information they had released had caused significant damage to the conspiracy, but the shadowy organization was far from defeated. We've identified the core leadership, Jason explained, pointing to a complex diagram on a makeshift bulletin board. But taking them down won't be easy. They've got fail-safes and contingency plans we haven't even begun to unravel. Sarah studied the faces on the board, a mix of politicians, business leaders, and shadowy figures she didn't recognize. But one photo, placed at the very top of the hierarchy, was blurred and indistinct. Who's that? She asked, pointing to the blurry image. The room fell silent. Jason and Marcus exchanged a loaded glance. That's what we need to talk to you about, Sarah, Jason said slowly. We've uncovered the identity of the conspiracy's leader, and it's going to be a shock. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Who is it? Marcus stepped forward, his face grave. It's your father, Sarah. Senator William Mitchell is the one behind it all. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Sarah processed this information. Her father, the man who had inspired her to become a journalist, who had always preached about the importance of truth and integrity, was the mastermind behind the very corruption she'd been fighting against. No, she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. There has to be some mistake. But as Marcus and Jason laid out the evidence, Sarah felt her certainty crumble. The pieces fit together too perfectly to be coincidence. He's been manipulating you your entire career, Sarah, Marcus explained gently, positioning you as a trusted voice, all while using your credibility to further the conspiracy's goals. Sarah's mind reeled, memories flooding back with new context. The gentle nudges towards certain stories, the inexplicable network decisions, the way her father had always seemed to know things before they happened. As the shock began to wear off, it was replaced by a steely resolve. Sarah straightened her shoulders, meeting the eyes of her allies. This doesn't change anything, she said firmly. If anything, it makes our mission more important than ever. We need to expose the truth, no matter who it hurts. The room filled with murmurs of agreement and nods of respect. Sarah Mitchell had just faced her greatest test and emerged stronger for it. As they began to plan their final assault on the conspiracy, Sarah knew that the hardest part was yet to come. She would have to confront her father, the man she had idolized her entire life, and bring him to justice. The fate of the nation hung in the balance, and Sarah was ready to sacrifice everything, even her own family, in pursuit of the truth. Little did she know, her father was already aware of her discovery, and he had set in motion a plan that would test Sarah's resolve to its very limits. The final confrontation was approaching, and it would shake the foundations of American democracy to its core. The corridors of power in Washington, D.C. buzzed with tension as Sarah Mitchell and her team put their final plan into motion. The Capitol building loomed before them, a symbol of democracy that had been corrupted from within. Sarah's heart pounded as she ascended the steps, flanked by Jason and Marcus. They had timed their arrival to coincide with a crucial Senate hearing, one where her father, Senator William Mitchell, was set to testify about recent national security concerns. As they entered the packed chamber, Sarah could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. Cameras flashed, and whispers rippled through the crowd. Her father, seated at the witness table, faltered mid-sentence as he saw her approach. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah announced, her voice ringing clear and strong. "I apologize for this interruption, but the American people deserve to know the truth." Security personnel moved to intercept her, but they were held back by a group of senators who had been secretly working with Sarah's team. Senator William Mitchell rose from his seat, his face a mask of fatherly concern. "Sarah, sweetheart, what are you doing? You're not well. Let me help you." Sarah met his gaze, unflinching. "No more lies, Dad. No more manipulation. It's time for the truth to come out." What followed was a masterful presentation of evidence, expertly crafted by Sarah's team. Documents, recordings, and testimony from turned conspirators were presented to the stunned Senate committee and the millions watching at home. As the evidence mounted, Sarah watched her father's facade crumble. The distinguished senator transformed before her eyes into a cornered man, desperate and dangerous. "You don't understand," he hissed, his eyes wild. "Everything I did for you, for our family, for America. You betrayed everything America stands for?" Sarah countered, her voice thick with emotion. "You betrayed me." Suddenly, William Mitchell reached into his jacket. Secret Service agents reacted instantly, but they were too slow. A small device emerged in his hand, his thumb hovering over a button. "If I go down," he snarled, "I'm taking it all with me." Time seemed to slow as Sarah realized what was about to happen. In that split second, she made a decision that would define her forever. She lunged forward, tackling her father to the ground. They grappled for control of the device as chaos erupted around them. In the struggle, Sarah's fingers found the device, and with a surge of strength, she wrenched it from her father's grasp. As security swarmed around them, Sarah stood, holding the dead man's switch high for all to see. The room fell silent. "This ends now," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber and across airwaves nationwide. "No more secrets, no more lies. The American people deserve the truth, and they will have it." In the days that followed, the full extent of the conspiracy was laid bare. Arrests were made at the highest levels of government, media, and industry. The nation reeled, but from the chaos emerged a renewed commitment to transparency and accountability. Sarah Mitchell became a symbol of this new era. Her courage in facing down her own father and risking everything for the truth inspired millions. As she stood before the cameras one last time, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance," she said, her eyes shining with conviction. "We must never again allow power to corrupt in the shadows. It's up to each and every one of us to stand up for truth, justice, and the true ideals of our democracy." As Sarah stepped away from the podium, she felt a profound sense of closure. The battle had been won, but she knew the work was far from over. There would always be those who sought to manipulate and control from the shadows. But now, thanks to her sacrifice and the courage of those who stood with her, the American people were awake and watchful. The torch of truth had been lit, and Sarah Mitchell had faith that it would continue to burn bright, lighting the way towards a more transparent, just, and truly democratic future. Thank you very much for listening to this story. Comment below what you thought of the ending and from which city you're listening to us. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, click on the next story that's appearing on your screen now. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories together. See you soon.